our skeleton, and our skeleton is more or less like this, right? And this in black is going to be the axial skeleton. Appendicular skeleton are going to be the bones that you're going to have in your legs, and the bones basically that you're going to have in your arms. So today we're going to cover only the black part, okay? So then which is going to be the axial skeleton. And as you can see here, right, we're going to start with, for example, the skull, right? That's going to be axial skeleton right there. So in our skull, we're going to have in there multiple different bones. They're going to be frontal bone, parietal bone, temporal bone, right? So let's take a look at that. So if we scroll down right here, that we have multiple different bones that are going to make up our skull. I'm going over here because it's a better view. So what bones are going to make up our skull? So we have this bone right here, frontal bone on top, parietal bone right here, temporal bone, occipital bone, lambdoid suture. That's this one right there. So between the occipital and parietal, lambdoid suture. Between the frontal and the parietal, coronal suture right there. Then you have another suture right here in between the parietal bone and the temporal bone. This is going to be the squamous suture. We have two temporal bones. We have two, one on the right side, the other one on the left side. And we also have two parietal bones. If we have two parietal bones, one of them is over here and the other one should be on the other side around here. So therefore, there's also a joint between the two parietal bones, which is going to be more or less around here. And that one is going to be called the sagittal suture, but we don't see it here. Now, if we look at individual bones, we have this bone right here. What is the name of this bone right here? This is going to be, and in the mandible, is this one right here. You can see that you're going to have different areas. You're going to have different parts. For example, you're having here a hole. So therefore, this is going to be the mental foramen. This part right here is going to be called the body. This is the angle. This one right here, from here to here, that's the ramus. This is the mandibular notch. This is the mandibular condyle. And now you're going to have in here the coronoid process, this one. Okay, so then you have all these different markings right there in this bone. Actually, we have other bones in here. For example, you can see this one. What is this bone? This bone right here is going to be the temporal bone. So what do you have in there? You have a hole right here. This hole right there is the hole that we need for our ears. That's going to be the external acoustic meatus. Then we have this bump right here, this large. So this is going to be a mastoid process, and that's what you can see right here. Then we have a very thin process right here going down like this, as you can see right there. That one is going to be the styloid process. That's that. Then you have another process right here that goes from this bone towards the green bone right there. This is going to be the zygomatic process. If you look right here, for example, the parietal bone, well, there's nothing in there. You can look in here, another bone that you're going to have in here. This one is going to be your maxilla. Okay, the maxilla is the bone where we're going to have the upper teeth. This part right here is the alveolar process. Right here, we have a little hole. That's going to be the infraorbital foramen. We have now the green bone right here. This bone right here is going to be the zygomatic bone. Zygomatic bone is going to have this part right here, right there. That part is going to be the temporal process. Now, if you look over here, it's the same thing that we mentioned before. It's just a different view. If we scroll down right here, same figure as we've seen before. We scroll down, we have the same skull, right? But now we are looking at it from the bottom up. In here, you see a big part of the occipital bone. Right here, you actually have a big hole right there in the occipital bone, which is going to be the foramen magnum. We said a hole in a bone is a magnum. On each side of the foramen magnum, you're going to have this. This is a condyle. We have two, but it's this one right here in orange. This is going to be the sphenoid bone. So you just scroll down right here. You can see again that bone that you showed before in orange. So here's the sphenoid bone. The sphenoid bone is going to have different areas. Okay, it's going to have a couple of wings. This one right here is the lesser wing. These two right there. And this one right here is going to be the greater wing. There. This part right here is going to be the sella turcica. You can see right here. You can have in here the lesser wing and the greater wing. And there's going to be quite a few holes in there. And remember, I said that those holes in the bone is going to be foramen, right? So therefore, you have in here foramen spinosum, foramen lacerum right here. Okay, those are little holes that we have in this bone. Okay, and right here, we're going to have the optic canal. These are going to be for the nerves coming from your eyes, right? If this is your head, your eyes are going to be more or less around here. In the middle of the frontal bone, you're going to have this bone right here. This is going to be depicted for you right here in green. This bone, the top part of that bone is what you see right there. This bone is going to be the ethmoid bone, as you can see right here. The ethmoid bone right there. That is this bone right here in green. The top part of the ethmoid bone is going to be the crista galli. This part right there is going to be the crista galli. On the side, you're going to have a few holes. This is going to be the cribriform plate. Remember, this is the top view of this bone right here, the ethmoid bone. That's going to be just the top part. The bottom part is going to be going down into what it is your nose. If we scroll down right here, you can have a better view now of the ethmoid bone right there. The ethmoid bone would be this one right here. That's your ethmoid bone. As I was saying, what you saw before, it was just the tip, just this part right here. So this is the crista galli, and on each side of the crista galli, you will find the cribriform plane. Then I told you the bottom part of this bone will go actually down into what your nose is. And that's going to be this part right here called the perpendicular plate. Perpendicular plate is a very important part of this bone that is going to separate basically the right side of your nose with the left side of your nose. If you scroll down right here, you have the same image right here. Not the same, but this is a real view of a skull, right? The previous one was actually a figure. So if we scroll down right here, now we have the posterior view of our skull. Even better is this one, where you can see the sagittal suture right here, and how this is parietal bone. This is your frontal bone because this is anterior, as you can see right there. And this is the occipital bone because this is posterior. As we said, this is going to be the lambdoid suture. This is going to be the coronal suture. And this one going across is going to be the sagittal suture. If we scroll down right here, you can see a better view of the ethmoid bone, as I mentioned. At the very top, that's going to be the crista galli. We scroll down right here. In some of the bones that we have in our skull, we're going to have some spaces, and these spaces are going to be called sinuses. And that's what you see right here, right? You have in here the frontal sinus, right? The maxillar sinus, and the spinal sinus. This is a fetal skull. In the case of the fetal skull, obviously you don't have sutures because the bones are not necessarily connected yet. So that's why instead of having sutures and things like that, we're going to have in here a lot of spaces. This one right here. These spaces are going to be called the fontanelles. This is what a lot of people call this the soft spot. And we have quite a few fontanelles, right? We have right here a fontanelle right here in the back as well. Right here, we have some right here on the side. Okay. So then those are going to be fontanelles. If we scroll down right here, now we're going to get to the other part of our axial skeleton, which is going to be our vertebral column. This that you have right here on the back, there's no such thing as the spine, right? What you have in there is your vertebral column. Why is it called the vertebral column? Because each one of these bones, you see right there, that's going to be the vertebrae. This is a vertebrae, this is a vertebrae, another vertebrae. So therefore, the entire thing is going to be your vertebral column. So how many vertebrae do we have in there? Well, we have 7 vertebrae in our neck, so they're going to be called cervical vertebrae. We have 12 thoracic vertebrae. Those are going to be the vertebrae that you have in your thorax. We have 5 lumbar vertebrae, which are going to be the back, the bottom part. And at the very bottom right here, you're going to have sacral vertebrae. Okay, so then you're going to have 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic vertebrae, and 5 lumbar vertebrae. So you can see right there. Therefore, you're going to have 24 vertebrae that you're going to have in there approximately. If you scroll down right here, I mentioned that the type of vertebrae, we said we have an atlas, an axis, and we said we have 12 thoracic vertebrae, 7 cervical vertebrae, we have 5 lumbar vertebrae, and I already mentioned this. So if we scroll down right here, now we can look at this vertebrae that we have in our body. So most of the vertebrae are going to have these characteristics. Look, said we are going to have a spinous process, transverse process, vertebral foramen, body, superior articulating facet, and at the bottom you should have the inferior articulating facet. So if those are the main markings that you have in the bone. If you look over here, look, this bone right here, this is going to be a lumbar vertebrae. This one right here, lumbar vertebrae. If we look over here, what is this? This is going to be a thoracic vertebrae. This is a thoracic vertebrae, this one right here. And what do you have? Same thing that we mentioned before. Body, vertebral foramen, spinous process, transverse process, superior articulating facet, and at the bottom you should have the inferior articulating facet. Or you can even see it better right here, right? Superior articulating facet right there, and inferior articulating facet right here. Now, in your thorax, you will have these other two facets right here, because in your thorax you have your ribs, right? The ribs go like this, so the ribs will articulate with that thoracic vertebrae. This ones right here are going to be cervical vertebrae. As you can see right here, right, they also have, you have the body, they have the transverse process, you're going to have the spinous process, the vertebral foramen. So again, they have the same characteristics, except the first two, as I mentioned. The first one, we said this is going to be the atlas. So this one right here is going to be the atlas right there. This one. And this one right here is going to be the axis. This one right here is the axis right there. They're going to be somewhat different. So for example, the atlas doesn't have a process. I remember we said this is going to be process right there. They don't have process. So this is going to be posterior tubercle and anterior tubercle. They already have a body. So this one doesn't have a body. But it has the vertebral foramen. Also in the transverse process right here, you're going to have transverse foramen, something that you don't have in other ones. This is the axis. The axis is going to start taking some of the shape that the other bones are going to have. So now you begin to see right here, for example, in the spinous process. You still have right here vertebral foramen, but something that is very characteristic of the axis is that you're going to have this elevation right here, this thing like a mountain, like that. This is going to be called the dens or the odontoid process. This dens that you see right here is like a mountain in here because the dens comes over here like this. So it goes from the vertebra at the bottom and it goes like that. If we look at the sacrum, you can see that the sacrum also has certain holes in it. These ones are going to be the sacral foraminas. Connecting the foraminas, we're going to have some lines in here that are going to be called the transverse ridges. Below the sacrum, you're going to have another bone right here, which is going to be called the coccyx. At the very top, you're going to have the sacral promontory. This is the anterior view. The posterior view of the same bone, which is going to be this one. You can see here that you have a lot of elevation right here. This is going to be called the median sacral crest. You have a cavity in here called the sacral canal. And right here on each side, you're going to have the articular surface. If we scroll down right here, we're going to have the other part of the axial skeleton, which is going to be our rib cage, right? Our thoracic cavity. In there, you can see that we have this bone right here, which is going to be the sternum. The sternum is going to have three parts or three areas. The top part is going to be the manubrium. The middle is going to be the body. And the bottom part is going to be the xiphoid process. This bone is important because in this bone, you're going to have the ribs are going to be connecting to them. So right here, you have the rib right here connecting to this bone right there. And they're going to be connected with cartilage, as you can see right here. Now, when the ribs are connected to the sternum with its own unique cartilage, as you can see right there, then these are going to be called true ribs. However, when the ribs actually share the cartilage, as you can see right there, so for example, that, and these are coming right here like this, as you see, they share the cartilage, one cartilage connects into the sternum, then these ones are going to be called false ribs. And then we're going to have other ribs that don't connect to the sternum at all. Like for example, this one right there, and this one right here, right? They don't connect to the sternum. So therefore, these ones are going to be called floating ribs. So if we scroll down right here, we also have some characteristics that we're going to find in the ribs. Right? In the ribs, basically, you're going to have the head, the neck, and the tubercle. Okay, head, neck, and the tubercle. And in some books, this part right here that is going to go like this, that's the angle, as you can see right there. This part right here is the part that is going to be connected to the vertebrae right here. And this one is going to be to the cartilage that eventually connects into the sternum. Next, we have this little bone right here. This is going to be called the hyoid bone. This is the only bone in our entire body that is not connected to other bones. This bone is going to be found at the level of your neck. This bone has this part right here, which is going to be the body. This elevation, which is going to be the lesser horn. And this other elevation right here, which is going to be the greater horn.